Okay, so let's just start with the definition. So empathy, as opposed to sympathy, is the ability to recognize, understand, and share the thoughts and feelings of another person. You could be animal or fictional character. If you're reading a book, a fictional character, listening to a radio drama, or watching videos. But it is that recognizing, it is that first critical understanding of what other people are feeling and thinking. That is the pivotal part of it. And then sharing those thoughts, not just with the other person, but also internally. It is crucial for establishing relationships, and it does show a side of compassion. And back to my first point, in this time of global pandemic, the premise of compassion is more important now than it has been for many, many generations, I feel. People losing jobs, people losing homes, people not having enough money to feed themselves or their family, poverty increasing. It's a sad state of affairs. And so that premise of compassion is critical. But it's also critical in small business. This is also a time when small businesses are increasing, as people are losing their jobs, as people are being laid off or made redundant. Individuals are looking to start their own companies now. It's a very opportune time. Governments have been putting in place financial support for startups. Venture capital is still flowing. People are looking to make investments. In the background, apologies for the barking of the dog. Still working from home. And it involves experiencing somebody else's point of view rather than your own, which will then allow you to create more understanding and helping behavior rather than it being forced. So again, I said rather than sympathy. Sympathy is that I'm feeling sorry that you're in pain. Empathy is that I actually feel your pain, is that you're feeling it along with them, not just understanding that they're in pain, not just understanding. Now, I'm talking about the pain side, but there is a critical aspect to it in business, where you can start understanding more if you're empathizing with your customers, with your partners, with your investors, with your employees, and quite frankly, with yourself. But I feel the more critical one here, the top four, although you should be somewhat empathetic with yourself, understanding, and I did say pain. When we talk about startups, we do talk about solving a pain point, solving a problem. And customers have a pain point. You have developed a solution to a pain point that you have. Then you have to take this out and start doing customer discovery, and you need to try to find customers who are having similar pain problems with a service, with a product, with an aspect of a product, with what is not available in the market, with pricing, et cetera, and then empathizing with them to be able to adjust your product, your service, your offering, so that it provides full response to what the customer is looking for. Because at the end of the day, if you're not empathetic in providing the solution that the customer wants, regardless of the fact that you may have the next cure for cancer, if that's not what customers are looking for, if that's not what people are willing to pay for, then truly you actually don't have a product. If nobody's going to buy it, you really don't have a company. So what can empathy do for your startup? Well, right off the bat, it can define the right problem to solve. Although you may have a solution, again, you're solving what you feel is the problem, not what potentially the customer is feeling is the problem. You're not going to buy the product. You're going to create the product. It also allows you to breed that premise of flexibility and adaptability. So if a customer says that's a really great idea, but it's not quite what I'm looking for, what I'm looking for is a little bit more this and maybe that, or my real problem is over here, it will start breeding into your startup. And this is why it's really critical to startup, that premise of flexibility and adaptability. And because startups are small, you have the ability to be able to move quickly. You can tend to be nimble. You tend to be able to adapt and move quickly to a solution that is more likely to solve the problem of your customer. And that in turn is actually going to increase your brand power. Customers going to look at you and say, oh my goodness, for once in my life, a company listened. Right? How many of us have been in the situation where we've been stuck on hold with a service department or a customer service and just wishing for once they would actually listen to you? That premise of building up empathy is going to allow you to listen more with your customers, more with your partners, more with your investors, and be seen in a much more positive light, and which will help build your brand. But it cannot be superficial, the premise of empathy. It actually has to be deep. It has to be real. And if this is the case, you're going to be able to start building a profitable and sustainable business. Those relationships are going to grow. Those relationships are going to blossom. Customers are going to be more likely to tell you what their real problems are because you are starting to inculcate those solutions within your product, your service. You also have to start understanding the world as it is and not how you would like it to be. And again, this comes back to that premise of when you're creating the solution, whatever that company might be, company XYZ. And when it first is off the paper, during your ideation period, after you've developed your first wireframe prototype, this is your idea to a problem. This is your solution to a problem, and it hasn't been tested with customers yet. So this is how you see the world to be wrong, which is perfect. It's a great place to start, but it is not the solution unless customers are willing to adopt it and adapt to it. And also unless you're willing to adapt it to what the customers are looking for. And the only way to truly be able to do that is to talk to your customers, look at your customers in the face, and empathize with how they feel and what they think of your product or your service. And you need to listen. Listening is critical. And it's, again, not superficial. It is real. So why do you practice empathy? Because it validates how others feel. It shows vulnerability to them. And it actually shows a willingness to be selfless, that this is not about you. It also allows you an opportunity to start getting in touch with your own stereotypes, prejudices, and biases. You would be really, really, really shocked to understand how your cognitive biases, this is muscle memory of the brain and how it's being built into place, are affecting the way that you manage. I'm going to go to market this way because this is the way that it's always been done. Maybe there's a different way to get to market. Maybe there's a different customer segment out there. Maybe there's a different method for production. But because I have these certain cognitive biases, because I know that I need it to be built in Canada only, I'm not thinking about getting it constructed in India, where the cost of production may be less because of volume, 1.3 billion as opposed to 30 some odd million. Volumes will make things cheaper. You also have to be able to increase your ability to understand others' nonverbal communications. This is why I suggest this is done face-to-face, which during a time of global pandemic is difficult. However, here I am talking to you from Canada on video streaming service, and we're able to communicate this way. You can still get on Zoom or Teams or Google Hangouts or whatever the case may be, and look and see what the person is doing. Watch their body language. Are their arms crossed? Where are their eyes looking? I make a rule when I teach that I have all of my students turn their screens on, because I want to be able to see where their eyes are looking. Are they looking at me? Are they engaged? Are they participating? Doesn't really matter what they say, it's how they're saying it and what they look like when they're saying it. And this comes down to the 93% rule. Words account for only 7% of a message communicated. The other 93 is in body language, frowning, yawning, or looking at one's watch. I have 2 screens here, and when I get bored, I will go to my second screen and start looking at things on the internet, start doing work on my second screen. My camera's still looking at me, but my eyes are tracking to a second screen. I was called out on that the other day. You have to listen and be in the moment. You need to be fully present. Do not do other things while you're communicating. Don't email, don't take calls, don't work on paperwork, don't fiddle with something on your desk. You have to be extremely respectful. And by showing that you're willing to do this, especially with a customer, especially with an investor, especially with partners, you're showing them that they are your priority. And this is more likely, if they see themselves as your priority, they're more likely to share with you how they really feel and not tell you what they think you want to hear. And a good thing is, and this is common, I think, between both of our cultures, is smile. Something as simple as a little smile is going to go a long way to put other people at ease. And it shows that you do care. And they're looking for it. If you're frowning, and I'm probably the worst to say this, and I know Mutu will probably comment about this at some point in time, I'm grumpy. This is morning for me. I do have a cup of coffee in my hand. I'm trying to. It isn't filter coffee, I'm sorry. It's just regular coffee. And so I don't smile as often as I should. Although I'm doing it right now as I'm trying to catch myself. But something as simple as a smile is going to allow people to share more with you. Practice that. And encourage everybody to participate, especially the quiet ones. You need to give them affirmation. Show genuine curiosity in their lives. Ask questions about their hobbies, their challenges, their families, their lives, and their aspirations, because the solution that you are trying to build may come from a different aspect. A different market may open up, a different opportunity, and something easy that you've been thinking about at the back of your mind, which, you know, is way out in left field that you figure you cannot do with your product or service, may be exactly what your customers are looking for. Have a genuine conversation with people. When you visit not just an employee, but a customer or partner, don't stand while you talk. Sit down, get on the same level, look eye to eye. Don't stand over top of someone, because it puts you in a position of power, and therefore there's not a desire to share. So starting with the customers, again, you have to figure out what the problem is and not the solution. And this is the problem that we all suffer from when we develop our own startups. Is predominantly, especially in North America, we start with the solution. We figure we're smarter than our customers, and we are going to offer you the best solution. And people talk about it all the time. People talk, I've got the solution for you. Well, you're not sure. You've developed a solution for a problem that you've identified, but you're not sure if it's the solution for the people. So talk to them about what the problem is. Ask them, what is frustrating them about printing, about pens, about software that is used, CRMs, whatever it is that you're developing, about medical devices, about a cane. Why is using that cane wrong? Why is, the different aspects? Just ask them what the problem is. Is it balance? Is it so on and so forth? And this means that you have to actually know and understand the problem from your market's point of view, and then building a solution to meet that view. You are going to have some idea of what your solution is going to be. And again, you may have built a prototype. You may have your MVP already developed, but now you have to start tweaking it. And again, being a startup, this is perfect, because if you're talking and listening to your customers, if you're talking and listening to investors and partners, they're connected to a much different network than you are. And they're talking to other people about where their problems sit. And they are going to give you so much more information about how differently your product could be used, about how even something as simple as the color may be off-putting to them as a customer that you'd never thought about. You just did the red because red was cheap to produce. You didn't realize that to some people is off-putting. So how do you do this? Well, interview your customers. I know at IIT Madras, you have the program through the Gopalakrishnan and Deshpande Center called Incubate. And we have the same program here at the University of New Brunswick called iSTEM. And it's based upon the United States National Science Foundation I-Corps program. And it's all about customer discovery and customer interviews. Get in your customer's face. Ask the questions about what it is that they're looking to do. Talk to them. Ask open-ended questions. Don't ask them the yes/no questions. Is this a good solution? Yes, no. Those sort of questions don't actually allow somebody to start talking with you. Take notes. Take notes. Ask people how things feel and take notes about what their response is. Ask them if you can record the session. Some people, and just because that way then you can be more in the moment as you're discussing things with them. You can be right there with them and listen to what they're saying so that you can go back to your notes later. If there's critical pieces that you think that are being brought to you, write those down very quickly. But if you're allowed to record the session, you can listen and you can watch for the nonverbal clues. And Mutu, I can talk forever. So whenever you want to shut me down and start with other things, we can go ahead and do that. Some examples of empathy in action. One of the critical ones that's famous within industry is what happened with Xerox in the 1960s in the Palo Alto Research Center that they had called PARC. Xerox photocopier was revolutionizing the business world. Their PARC facility is actually working on other interesting pieces. One of those was called the Xerox Alto, which was the first fully functional personal computer. But the Xerox leadership wasn't listening to their customers. They actually just figured that they've got massive profits being generated by what they were doing in terms of producing their 914 photocopier. And so they didn't empathize with what their customers were looking at. They didn't talk to people about it. Their idea was dollars first. They also didn't talk to their partners at PARC, who also at that time had developed something which is akin to the mouse that we use nowadays. because of this, because of not listening to people that are partners inside the company, as well as what kind of company people were looking for outside of the company, Xerox actually missed out on being a landmark company in personal computers and hardware devices for personal computing, and instead became a photocopy company. The music industry, one of the most critical pieces that took place was today's generation desire to listen to music live and wanting to be able to select songs. I don't want all 14 songs that this musician is producing. I want to be able to pick and choose my 3 or 4 more favorite ones that were on there. And the first premise was, this is the premise of streaming music. But music industry was making so much money from selling CDs, they didn't care what their customers wanted. Customers are going to listen to music anyway, and they're still going to shell out $30, $40, $20, $30, $40 Canadian, which back in the 80s we all did, for compact discs after we'd already bought the vinyl of the music about 5 years before. But people wanted individual songs. People wanted to be able to just grab snippets of what that musician is doing. And so Napster and LimeWire were developed, and those were some of the first online streaming services. And people were trying to sue them. The music industry was trying to sue them all the time because they were selling people songs or allowing for share of songs. They weren't selling. Apple was the first one who really jumped onto it, and Apple Music, and the fact that you can actually buy tracks off of albums, as they were then paying money back to the musicians. But at the beginning, the music industry didn't want to listen to the customers and what they were going, what they truly wanted, which was not the whole album. They just wanted 1 or 2 songs. I heard it on the radio. I'd like to listen to it again. You have to go out and buy the entire thing for $30. No, I just want to listen to the song. I really like that. It was a catchy tune. Not empathizing, not listening to the customer. And CD sales have since gone the way of the dodo. Everybody streams music now. Even old farts like me have a ton of songs on their iPhone. And then Warby Parker, most recently, with the work that they're doing with glasses, and understanding that people buying glasses, I'm a glasses wearer, have been since I was 3 years of age, and going to buy glasses, usually in North America, you buy them from the dispensary where you get your eyes tested, and those areas were charging you a fortune. And Warby Parker was one of the first ones to start doing it online. Consumers weren't getting what they needed from any of the big players, and Warby Parker saw this opportunity for a more human, service-oriented approach, and it has been embraced 100% by the population of people buying glasses. I now buy my glasses and lenses online, and for what I used to have been able to buy 1 pair of glasses, I can get 5 or 6. And then Elon Musk, and this is more about the Boring Company, which he created, which I would suggest, I'm going to skip over this, but everybody knows that Elon Musk has started to listen more to what people want and trying to do it in different ways, looking for faster and quicker solutions. We saw his rocket splash down on the weekend, and basically trying to disrupt and give people what they want by listening. Very interesting premise that for the longest time, larger industries have felt they didn't need to do, which is listening to their customers. So why is being empathetic important for your customers? Well, people like to be listened to. If you're present, if you're watching, you can actually catch the long verbals. And people are going to feel more engaged with your product or your service because they can see themselves in your product or your service. And that's critical because it's going to allow a more stickiness for a relationship with the customer. The customers are going to be more willing to stay with you when another product potentially comes online. More likely to be early stage adopters because, again, they can see themselves in it. I sat down with Dominic, I sat down with Mutu, I sat down with Angela, and I talked to them about their product or service. And they listened to what I said, and now I can see they changed it. They've added this component. That's exactly what I was looking for. You're darn right I'm going to be one of the first people to buy it. Out of the gate, I will put my money down. And I'm going to tell my friends, I'm going to tell my network that they should engage with this product. And it shows that you care, not just to make money, but to solve a problem. And that's where, I mean, Xerox, the example that I just showed, that's where Xerox fell down, is that they were all about dollars. They weren't looking for solutions that customers really wanted. But it's not all rainbows and happiness. There is a downside with empathy. And empathy can be emotionally taxing. Spending a lot of time thinking more about what your customers are doing, spending a great deal of time having people complain to you, having people tell you what's wrong, it's emotionally draining. Sometimes you need to stop doing it and get away from it. Over empathizing can delay solutions. And this is one of my critical weaknesses, because when I teach my class on venture creation, we talk about how many customer interviews you'd want to have before starting a project. Now, in Incubate and in iSTEM, we look at doing 100 customer interviews minimum over a 7-week period. I'd want to have 1,000. I'd want to make sure that I'm hearing it right from all sorts of different people. And if I need 1,000, well, it's going to take a long time to get to 1,000. So I'm going to delay getting my solution into the market, even though it's being tweaked and changed. I'm at iteration 1, or I'm at iteration 50. Now I'm at iteration 200. Now I've had another 50 interviews, and I've changed 3 or 4 more things. And you can see how this can be. And it can also lead to a stakeholder mismatch in the sense that you're now more interested in what the customer thinks than what the stakeholders in the company, your investors, your partners. And you are so far away from where your original solution is that sometimes those original stakeholders may no longer want to be with you. So I'm going to stop my statements there. I think, is that good, Mutu or Anjana?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's about a half hour. I've got more, but I figured I would stop and open up to some questions or just basic conversation. I probably should have started by also telling you a little bit about the J. Herbert Smith Center, and I was going to wait. Anyway, I see Mutu's on, so we can start with the discussion now, Mutu.
Yeah, I think let everyone ask a question. There's a question online, so I think let them interact with you. Jody, you can talk directly to Dominic. He'll be happy to take the question. Archana, you can unmute them or whatever.
Thank you, sir. Hello, sir. So I have a question. Within a pool, like we choose a pool of customers. So within a pool of customers, if we have different problems coming out from them, so how do we choose a certain problem? Like, do we go it based on majority of the customers stating that particular problem, or do we go it with the severity of the problem? Like, a problem might be very severe, but it might be affecting only a small pool of customers among the customers interviewed. So how do we go ahead with it? Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So first of all, you have to understand, I mean, you're going to have your idea of your solution to begin with, and then you're going to test that solution and ask customers what the problems are based around your solution without talking about what your solution is. So when you start getting these sort of minority, although they are big problems, but I would suggest you go with the majority. If you are solving more of your customers' problems, sorry, I just realized I was leaning into my camera, my apologies. If you start solving more of your customers' problems, there's going to be more people who are willing to engage with your product, which at the end of the day suggests more people who are willing to purchase your product. So I would look at a larger majority, and also it has to be doable for yourself, right? They may come up with another problem that they're having, which your solution doesn't address, or it might, but it's going to infringe on something that's already there.
Yes, sir. So if they come up with a problem and then we come up with a solution, that might have a ripple effect, that might cause changes in what is already existing in our framework, and might unknowingly result in some other problems which are totally unidentified. So how do we go about that? Like once we bring the changes that are needed, and then we address their problem, then do we once again go up for a follow-up interview and then see if the change that we made resulted in any ripple effect, in any change in the framework of the problems caused because of that? Do we check that out or not?
To a degree. At that point in time, you may want to bring in just just a small group of people and talk to them about the changes that you've made with the product based upon their feedback. The problem that you're going to have becomes this paralysis by analysis, by continually change it. And this is where I fall down, is you change it based upon feedback, and then you go back for more feedback, and no, that's not really what I wanted. Can you do this? And then somebody else suggests something else. And then you go back in and you change it again. And suddenly your window to market goes from being, say, 3 months now to 6 months to a year to 2 years, because you're continually iterating your product based upon customer feedback. At some point in time, you have to get your product to market. And so, maybe just a small little focus group can help you after your first time with customer interviews. I wouldn't take it back out to a more global interview piece. And if you do, you might think about that as version 2.0. But try to, once you have your solution in place and once you have tweaked it based upon your customer feedback, try to then get that product to market if you're ready to go. If you want to go back out and check again in 6 months, then you start thinking about, okay, another 6 month field, but this is going to be version 2.0, version 3.0, or whatever, the next version of the product solution that you're going to put to market. But you still need to get something out there based upon those first interviews.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hope your question, Jyoti's question, is answered. We have the question from Harshini. Harshini, can you please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question?
Yeah, thank you, Archana. So good evening, sir. I have
Hello.
this one question, like you were speaking about the empathy towards the customers, but many a times, like I've seen customers do not respond to feedbacks. Like we make customers, we ask for many questions, like what are the pain points and what are the things they went through. So at times we do not find customers often responding to our feedback. So what can be done in such situations, sir?
Well, I mean, the main thing that you have to do is you have to talk to them face to face. Don't send out surveys. Surveys are okay, but I don't know about you, especially during this time of pandemic. I receive about 3 or 4 surveys a day. I've now started ignoring them. I do not fill them out anymore, although I filled them out this morning because I got the time wrong on this and I had some extra time. So critical piece number one, sit face to face with them. Number two, don't talk about your product. Talk about them. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them what they've been up to. Get around to that conversation. Start developing a relationship with them. You don't talk about your technology, because as soon as you talk about your technology, you're giving them the solution already. And you're giving them to a solution that you're not sure is actually the problem that they have. So if you're talking to your customers, don't talk about what the solution is that you've got. Talk about the situation that they're in. This in April, there was a Techstars startup global weekend for the pandemic, and I helped organize the event in Canada. My biggest problem that I had that weekend was the fact that systems like what we're using right now, the meat system, has only one or two of the parameters that I wanted to be able to use. I wanted to be able to develop a solution that was broader. And so I just started talking to people about what their experiences were like while they were online during conferences, during sessions like this. Did you enjoy it? What was missing? What would you have liked to have seen there? What about bandwidth? What about chittering of screens? What about sound quality? What about, you know, and you can have these sort of discussions with them. You don't really need, you know, you don't have to talk about their pain points. Asking somebody what their pain point is difficult. So you talk to them about what their experience is with the problem that you're trying to solve. So you get away from asking questions about pain points. You just have a discussion with them. So while we're online, what did you think about the sound quality in that last meeting we just had? Oh, it was really poor. Oh, really? Can you explain why? Mine was okay, but I noticed some people's faces were changing. What did you experience? And then they could go deeper into that conversation. Build upon their responses to you. And that way then you're going to get better feedback than just asking the straight, so what's the problem that you're trying to solve right now?
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Got it.
And you don't have to call me sir. I'm just Dom.
Yes. Thank you, Dom.
No problem.
Harshni, hope that answers your question. Any other questions from any other participants? You can unmute yourself and you can directly ask to Dom your questions.
So yeah, one follow-up question on the pandemic. You were mentioning about like showing empathy towards your employee too. So when I'm an employer and your employee is in a great crisis, like he has some financial crisis, but at the same time you want to show empathy, but maybe you're not able to. Maybe you are not able to give him his salary, or even you're in the same situation. So what can be done during that situation, Tom?
You need to have a conversation with them. You need to be honest with them, and you need to hear what their problems are. It's the exact same conversation that you would have with the customer. But see, what you're trying to do at this point in time, I feel, with employees, because everybody is suffering. Nobody can tell me that they're not suffering during this. I'm suffering through isolation. Our isolation in this province is much less than what you're going through in India. I'll be completely frank with that. We have very few cases here. I can get out to the golf course with my friends. I can go down to the pub. I can have a pint with my friends. So I'm very lucky. But the thing is I don't work in my office right now. This is my back room. My kitchen is there. I get up in the morning. I walk 30 seconds from my bathroom to the kitchen to grab a cup of coffee and sit down. This is problematic for me. To you as my employer, that could mean nothing. You don't care about that. You're sitting there saying, suck it up. Stop complaining about it. I've got to try to pay everybody and our sales are down and I've still got all the bills and we're still trying to produce the product. I don't care. But the thing is as an employer, you need to care. You need to listen. Nothing more than just listen, because people are hurting at this time. And if you listen to their problems, then there's a better chance that they're going to listen to yours. And in turn, when you're having struggles on that Thursday before the Friday payday, they may actually listen to you and say, listen, it's going to be 48 hours before I can pay you. I'm sorry. It's either that or else we shut down. And if you've listened to them, if you've built that stronger relationship, they're going to stick with you. But if you're going to dismiss them, if you're not going to listen to them, if you're not going to participate with them, because everybody at this time is suffering. And anybody who says otherwise, I apologize, but I just think that that's wrong. Because the isolation piece is very difficult for people. We are a culture of wanting to get together. And we've been told by our governments we're not allowed to. And witness what's happening in the United States. There are armed people who are saying, you can't tell me to wear a mask. You can't, because they're being told what to do. Now listen, I don't agree with those people. I think that they should listen to what health is saying. And in fact, the total number of cases of coronavirus evidence that in the US. But the thing is we're now getting to the point where we're just being extremely dismissive of how people are feeling during this time because we're all frustrated. So when you're sitting with your employees, sit down in a chair, don't stand up above them. Don't put yourself in a point of power. I'm not saying you have to be their best friends and you want to go play cricket with them on the weekend. You need to have a chat with them. Because if you're empathizing with them, if you're having discussion with them, then they're more likely also at the same time to understand the difficulties that you're going through as an employer, as you're trying to make ends meet, and as you're still trying to keep people employed.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Harshini. So hope that answers your question. Yeah, so we have another question from Nidya in the chat box. So what will be your advice for an aspiring social entrepreneur?
Well, in social entrepreneurship, the premise of empathy is even more important. You're trying to make social impact, so it's naturally fitting with everything that you do. But it all still fits into the same space. If it's a service that you're providing, and most social entrepreneurship pieces are services, make sure it's the service that the people want, not what you think they need. If you are doing this for a certain group of people and they are disadvantaged or they need assistance and you feel you have the solution, make sure you're right. Have a chat with them about it. Ask them what they've tried to get and how come they haven't been able to get it. Ask them what they've been offered in the past and why that's upset them so much. So again, it's no different than giving a product solution. You're in most social entrepreneurship sides, it's a service solution. But you have to, in the same way, make sure that the solution that you're developing is what the customers are in need of. Now, while this service may be sold to the government to be able to offer as a service to the general population, you need to think about how the end users are going to be interacting with it. And if it's not what they want, if they want blue and you're providing green because they've told you time and again they would like blue, then they're not going to interact with it. Does that answer your question, Nidya?
Hope, Nidya, that answers your question.
Dominic, I have a question here. It's at what point will empathy turn into a weakness? And how will one manage situations where one's decency or concern is taken as his or her weakness?
I don't think empathy can ever turn into a weakness. You just have to be wary about where you cut it off. In the sense that you have to limit yourself to how much you're going to. Empathy is not a soft quality. You can still be tough and be empathetic. So I mean, I don't think it's ever a weakness. I think it becomes a weakness if you spend too much of your time talking to customers and too little of the time getting your product to market. It's a parallel process. So I would suggest, in the sense of weakness as in not strength, but weakness as an impingement on your ability to be able to move forward, I would suggest that the time it becomes a weakness is when you consider doing more interviews when you already have the answer to your questions.
Okay.
And you're not spending enough time developing your product, but you've already heard from 150 people who are potential customers who are giving you a solution, which and they may even be validating exactly what it is that you're saying, right? I mean, we took it customer interviews, but it's also a validation. And they may say, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is perfect. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. And so, you know, they're already there agreeing to you. But if you keep on going back out and trying to get another 100 or 200 people, you may be missing an opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope that answers Benoit's question. We have next question from Devendra. Devendra, can you please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question?
Is this one in the chat?
Yes, sir. So I can read it out.
Yeah, I've got it here. Thank you.
Yeah, during COVID, it's difficult to connect with customers directly, but it's necessary to empathize with them personally. So what do you suggest to connect in this time?
Exactly what we're doing right now. We have more opportunities for connecting online than we've ever had in the past. It's funny. The premise of Zoom, if I could go back in time, I would have invested in Zoom probably in October of last year. But we didn't have many options for this sort of thing. And this sort of thing, I mean, is just like an online collection place. Set it up. There are free versions of this. Zoom has a free version where you can sit and have a meeting for 40 minutes free, as long as you have internet. The worst thing you can do is, instead of going to see them face to face, if you cannot connect online, if you not have a camera, if you're having difficulty doing that, give them a phone call. You're going to miss the visual clues and the visual cues, but at least you're talking to them. At least you're talking to them. But I would suggest this is a fantastic time for this. We're looking at creating iSTEM going forward, and I know Incubate has still continued to go forward. I was talking to Anand KV, who's one of the instructors in the Incubate program. He's also an instructor in our program here in Canada as well, and he says that they're doing a lot of this online, and the participants, the cohort members, are doing their interviews online. And so put this on, turn your camera on, grab a cup of filter coffee and have a chat with the person on the other end. And I would suggest that, you can't do it face to face right now. No, but you still can do it online. And you've got Zoom, you've got Teams, you've got Google Hangout, you've got Meet, there are so many different platforms that are available now that we didn't have 8-10 months ago. Because of the isolation, people are finding other ways to be able to talk with each other. On your phone, you have video chats. You can just use FaceTime on here if you need to. That way, then at least you can actually pick up on some of the visual cues. So don't be hesitant to try to connect online.
Thank you, Dom. So we have next question from Ehas Elsh. Do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead with your question, Ehas? Okay, then I'll read out the question for you. How will empathy will be effective in starting a new joint venture when the business partner is with a higher hand in business?
Thanks, Ehas. I'm just trying to understand the question. I'm guessing by this you mean that basically the business partner owns more of the company. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Dominic?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to start a venture. I will say it like an example, okay?
Yep.
I'm going to start a business with technological transfer partnership with another company. In that case, how will this empathy will play a role? How could I communicate with the business partner effectively using the empathy?
The exact same way. You have to talk to them. It's the same way as I was talking about the employer-employee, the same way we're talking about the customer. You also have to do this with your partners as well, because you have to make sure that there's a fit. And in most cases, it's actually more important, because the customer is a transactional relationship. They're going to interact with you by purchasing your product, your solution, and then they're going to send out any comments online and engage that way. Whereas where you're talking about starting a company with another group, this is not short term. This is not transactional. This is an ongoing relationship. And if you can't have a meeting of minds at a level where you understand what the other person is thinking, where you take into considerations their feelings about the work that's being done, where you take into consideration how your solution is going to affect them, how your day-to-day work is going to affect them, without having conversations with them, then you're doomed to fail. So in the same way that you would have a customer discovery interview, make sure that you have face-to-face conversations with these people. See how they're responding to you. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them what they're working on. Talk to them about problems that they're having, right? It's the same way. You're looking to interact with them as if they were that employee-employer relationship, but you're together. So always the same thing. You have to be empathetic about how they're feeling. Again, I said this, that during COVID, we're all feeling the isolation that's with us. We're all concerned about the financial hits that are taking place globally. So you have to be wary of that.
Thank you, Mr. Dominic.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
So we'll take, I have a question.
Okay.
So what will be the effects, or what will be the results from the lack of empathy in any business? So you have been talking about the significance of empathy So if there is a lack of empathy in any business, what will be the outcome of that, sir?
The worst outcome would be that you have a product or a solution that nobody wants. The fact that you haven't talked to a customer and that your statement is that I have the solution to your problem. I don't care what your thoughts are on the problem. Here's my solution. So that is the biggest sort of far right negative aspect of not having empathy. So a product with no market, which basically means you don't have a company, nobody's going to buy your product, and you have to fold the tent and go home. The next piece is that you also would miss opportunities in the market. And by not empathizing and discussing with your customers, there's always an opportunity for new versions of your product or your solution, different markets for your products or solution, different uses of your product or solution that you hadn't thought of, but that your customers are. And if you were dismissing the feelings of your customers, you could completely miss out on that. So say they are still buying your product, even though you're not really listening to them, the possibility of growth of your company is going to be limited by the fact that you're not engaging with your customers. So those would be the two major downsides.
Thank you, Dom. So before we wrap up, I would like to make a few announcements here. So we are hosting an Ask Me Anything session on the coming Thursday at 5 p.m. And the topic on the session is Ask Me Anything on support provided by DST for Innovation Entrepreneurship by Dr. Anita Gupta, who's scientist, advisor, and head DST. We've also created a feedback form, so I'll be posting the link in the chat box. So please, requesting the participants to please fill the feedback form for us to improve the upcoming session. And thank you, Dom. Thank you for your time. It was really informative and it's also a useful session. We'll be posting the session video in our YouTube channel. So for the participant who missed the session today, so hope it is fine with you, Dom.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dom. Thank you, all the participants. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So we'll have a closing remarks from Muthu, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Tom, for coming over this early in the morning. It's always a pleasure seeing you. And soon you'll be here to come in person and do one of the lunch sessions you did some time back with Paul and Darindra and the rest of them. Okay.
Yeah, I have to say thank you, Muthu, for this, and I wish everybody on the call good health. I hope you stay safe. I miss you, my friend Muthu, and I can't wait to see you again in person.
Yes, I'm supposed to come back this year and teach that, but it hasn't happened yet, so we'll see what happens.
We'll have you online in the least, so we'll definitely get you involved. Thank you so much for this opportunity, my friend.
And thank you very much. You take care, stay safe, enjoy the golf, won't get anything else. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Archana, for stick handling this for us. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, and the rest of the team is online, Sumitra is online, and also Harshini is online. So things are happening out here, even though a pandemic, we are growing, so it's good.
Absolutely. Well, everybody stay safe. Good luck with everything. And you guys can share my email if anybody has any questions where they want to send them to me. I'm happy to converse, or you can find me on LinkedIn and connect with me that way as well.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye now.